Walk into a Canadian pub in the 1960s or 70s and you'd know right away what kind of night you were stepping into. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of fried food. The jukebox hummed out Gordon Lightfoot or the Guess Who, and the sound of laughter rose over the clinking of pint glasses. Neon beer signs glowed against the wood-panelled walls, snow piled up outside the frosted windows, and somebody at the bar was talking about the Leafs, or maybe the Habs. Every pub had its regulars, every table its own stories, and on those tables stood the pints that kept Canada properly oiled. Some were legends, some were just background noise, but all of them meant something. These are 15 old Canadian pub beers you'll never taste again, though their memory still lingers like the last sip at closing time. We'll start where most nights began, with Labatt Blue. You didn't have to ask for it, you just said blue, and the bartender knew. Born in London, Ontario, it was the everyman's lager, crisp, smooth and loyal. In the 70s it was everywhere, hockey rinks, Legion halls, backyard barbecues. The blue label was a badge of normalcy, the taste of paychecks spent on a Friday night. Some said it was too plain, others swore nothing went down better after a long shift. Either way, it was Canada in a bottle, steady as the winter wind. If blue was the safe choice, Molson Export was its bolder cousin. Brewed since the 1900s, but reaching its stride in the 60s, Export had that malty body and creamy head that made it feel a bit more serious. It was a worker's beer, not fancy, not fussy. The slogan said, "An ale for the ale man," and it fit. You could spot that ship logo across the bar like a lighthouse in a storm. To many, X was the taste of loyalty, the beer your father drank and his father before him. It wasn't just about drinking, it was about belonging. Then came Carling O'Keefe, flashy, ambitious, and everywhere you looked by the early 70s. Carling wanted to be the beer of the modern man, the beer with television ads, billboards, and a logo that meant success. It was smoother, lighter, more urban, and it spread from Ontario to the west like wildfire. Some said it was all marketing and no soul, but others liked that it felt new. Order one and you felt a little different, like you were part of a faster, flashier Canada that was leaving the old tavern days behind. Not all stories were happy ones. In Montreal, Dow Ale was once king. Brewed by Dow breweries, it was the pride of Quebec bars, until the scandal of 1965. Rumours spread that Dow's beer had caused heart attacks after changes in the brewing process. The truth was murky, but the damage was done. Sales collapsed almost overnight. For many Quebecers, Dow became the symbol of how quickly a giant can fall. Still, old-timers remember its smooth amber taste and the way it filled every corner tavern along St. Catherine Street. A reminder that even legends can vanish with one bad headline. Labatt 50, on the other hand, never really disappeared. It just aged with its drinkers. Known simply as 50, it was the pint of dartboards and basement bars, cream ale, light gold, a little sweet, a little bitter. It wasn't trendy, but it was faithful. For decades, if you ordered a 50, everyone knew you were someone who didn't need impressing. In the 70s, it was Canada's best-selling beer. The label, with its red and gold design, became part of the country's wallpaper. It was the beer of uncles and laughter, of curling clubs and card nights that went too late. From the East Coast came a survivor, Moosehead Pale Ale, brewed in St. John, New Brunswick. The Oland family kept it alive through wars, prohibition and fires. By the 60s, it had become a symbol of maritime pride. The taste was dry, bitter, with a whisper of the sea in it. In pubs from Halifax to Moncton, Moosehead was more than a beer. It was proof that you could still be small and independent in a world of brewing giants. Every sip carried a bit of rebellion, a bit of salt air, and a lot of heart. Then there was Upper Canada Lager, a short-lived dream that came later in the 70s when drinkers started missing real flavour. It was what we'd now call craft, long before anyone used the word. Stronger, richer, more honest. It didn't last long, but it left its mark. You drank it if you wanted to make a point that beer could be more than foam and advertising. Today, bottles of Upper Canada are collector's items, a reminder of when Canadians first started pushing back against blandness. If you were looking for something with more bite, O'Keefe Extra Old Stock had you covered. A strong beer with a name that sounded like a promise and a warning. Served in stubby bottles, it packed a punch that regular lagers couldn't match. For some, it was a challenge, for others, a reward. One was enough, two meant trouble. It was the kind of beer that sat heavy in your hand and made you feel like you'd earned it. You didn't sip an extra old stock, you faced it. And then there was Laurentide, Quebec's quiet champion. Brewed by Molson and loved from Montreal to the Saguenay, it was a crisp lager with a clean finish. For decades, it was everywhere in La Belle province, the beer of students, workers, and musicians alike. Its commercials were light-hearted, its taste familiar. When it was discontinued, people didn't just miss the drink, they missed the memories it carried. Laurentide was Quebec in summer, the clink of bottles on a picnic table by the river. Black Label, or Carling Black Label if you wanted to sound proper, was another story altogether. Cheap, bold, and almost impossible to avoid. It was the beer of dive bars, of last calls and long stories. The label said, "Hey Mabel, Black Label," and the slogan stuck in the national mind. You either loved it or laughed at it, but you remembered it. For students and factory workers alike, it was the beer that asked for no excuses. If Labatt Blue was polite, Black Label was its loud, unapologetic cousin. Out east again, Schooner Lager was the maritime icon that wore its roots proudly. The slogan, "The schooner sails again," captured its spirit. Light, golden, and slightly sweet, it was brewed in Nova Scotia by Olin before they merged with Labatt. Schooner was the beer you drank with fish and chips, the beer you shared after a day on the docks. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. The schooner on the label looked like freedom to anyone who grew up by the sea. In the 70s, Molson tried to go upscale with Brador, short for Brasserie d'Or. It came in small bottles, darker, richer, and stronger than what most Canadians were used to. For a moment, it looked like the future, but the public wasn't ready. It was too heavy, too expensive, too different. Within a few years, Brador was gone, remembered mostly by those who liked to try something new before anyone else. Still, it had style, and that counts for something. Carling Red Cap Ale was the beer of grandfathers. The red cap on the label was instantly recognizable, and its mild bitterness made it easy to drink, maybe too easy. In Ontario and the prairies, Red Cap was everywhere. It had that old world taste, slightly yeasty, smooth and steady. When people talk about the old-time ales, they usually mean Red Cap, the kind of beer that didn't need a commercial because every tavern was its advertisement. Out west, Calgary beer carried its city's name with pride. Brewed by the Calgary Brewing and Malting Company, it was the prairie's answer to Molson. The red and white logo, the horse head, the slogan, "The beer drinker's beer." It was a Western classic, the taste of rodeos and barn dances, the first beer many Albertans ever had. When the brewery closed and the brand faded, it felt like losing a piece of local history. You can still find the old signs in antique shops, rusted but proud. And finally, Old Vienna, a name that sounded foreign but felt familiar. Originally from Ontario, it became one of those beers that quietly threaded its way across the country. Smooth, lightly malty, with that comforting middle ground taste that pleased everyone. It was the beer of bowling alleys, basement gatherings, and after-work laughs. By the 70s, it was the bridge between generations, the beer your dad drank and one you didn't mind borrowing from the fridge. So there you have it, 15 pints that shaped Canadian nights out. From the smoky pubs of Montreal to the neon taverns of Winnipeg, from Vancouver's waterfront bars to small-town legions in Nova Scotia. Each one carried a story, a taste, a time when the pub was the heart of the street. These weren't craft beers and they weren't perfect, but they were ours, simple, proud and full of memories. It wasn't just about what was in the glass, it was about the people sitting around it, the jokes told, the songs sung, the hearts broken and mended under dim lights and jukebox glow. The beers came and went, the labels changed, the breweries merged, but the feeling remained. The feeling of walking into a warm bar on a cold night, knowing you'd find friends, laughter, and a pint waiting for you. Maybe that's what we miss the most, not the taste itself, but the time it came from. A time when you could buy a round for $5, when the bartender knew your name, and when a beer wasn't a brand statement but a simple pleasure. Today, we've got craft this and artisan that, but there's something sacred about the old names: Labatt Blue, Molson X, Red Cap, Laurentide. The soundtrack of our youth in liquid form, so if you could step back for just one night to one of those crowded bars with the smoke hanging low and the laughter loud, which pint would you order? Which beer would you raise to the memories you'll never forget? Because even if we can't taste them again, they're still here, in the stories we tell, in the photos that yellow with age, and in the quiet hum of nostalgia that fills the heart like a well-poured pint.